I think that's one of the reasons people go into architecture, is they enjoy that problem solving, creative process. I think when I first started, I thought people were just going to come running to our door and I wouldn't have to go out and do anything. But that is obviously one of the naive things I thought when I started. And so now, getting involved in service clubs and chamber and other volunteer things around the community, it's huge. I mean, that's what it takes for us to have a community, is for people to be involved. And so I would say get involved.
What's going on, everybody? Kyle Powers here, Haven Real Estate Group at eXp Realty, here with another episode of Local Legends of the Flint Hills, where business meets community. I've got a very special guest with me, Tracy Anderson, here with Anderson Knight Architects. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today.
You bet, Kyle.
So, Tracy, talk to us a little bit. You guys have been in Manhattan for a little while now. What inspired you to start the business here in the Manhattan area?
I started working right out of school, graduated in '89 from K-State, and went to work for another local company here in town, and worked there for 13 years, and actually worked with my partner Dan at the same company for quite a few of those years. He left a few years before I did, but around 2002, having been out in the world for a handful of years, or a dozen years more, I started getting the itch to say, gosh, could I go out on my own and do this? And so I did, and I had that philosophy of, well, if I fall flat on my face, I can go somewhere else. So I launched the company in '02. I even partnered with another former employee who was out in Colorado, actually. And we started the company, and I was located downtown originally. And then Dan joined us a year later in 2003. And honestly, going into it, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so it was, I look back at my experience at the other firm and realize I learned a lot there that helped influence a lot of my decision making. And but I naively didn't know a lot of what I needed to know. And so that was probably both good and bad. I mean, we were just sort of living day to day at that time, trying to make things work. And thankfully, 22 years later, it's worked out. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's and that's the fun part, right? I mean, you learn as you go, but also you take your experiences and everything there. Exactly. So, what about for you personally? So you have, Anderson Knight's been here for, 22 years. When was the moment that you decided that you wanted to be in architecture?
Fourth grade, believe it or not.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I had an experience at my grade school. In fourth grade, I grew up in the Lenexa Overland Park area. And an architect came to an assembly that we had there, and he had this huge roll of blueprints, and they were actually the blueprints for Oak Park Mall. And, I was always a little fascinated by architecture and building, because there was houses being built behind where I lived, and I would always roam around those after the workers left and try to see what was going on. But this guy opened up this roll of plans, and I looked at it, and I'm like, I think I understand this. I was looking at it, that's a door, that's a water fountain, I could. And so right then and there, I'm going to be an architect. I just made the decision.
That's cool.
And I never even rethought it. I mean, I just went all the way through high school, and my mom told me, she goes, well, my mom's an ex-K-State grad from the 50s, and she goes, well, K-State's the place you go for architecture. And I go, all right, done deal. So I didn't think about any of that all through high school or anything. It was just, I'm going to be an architect. I'm going to go to K-State. Done. So,
Decision made.
Decision made.
I love that. No, that's awesome. That's knowing it from that young of an age is pretty cool to have. So, Tracy, with 70 plus years of experience between you and Dan combined, you guys have been able to really kind of create a business enhancing the human experience through the architectural design and all that kind of stuff. Talk to us a little bit about what those core principles look like and how that has kind of shaped the future of your company.
I think it's more about even just the experience of going through the process of a design project with folks. We've been fortunate that we've had a really wide range of folks that we've worked with from cities and school districts that do a lot of projects, and so they understand the principles behind how the process works. But we've also had a lot of singular clients who they're probably only going to go through this process maybe once in their life. And so how do we make that, one, a pleasant experience or an enjoyable experience, and two, how do we basically help educate them on what the experience should be like, what the process is like, and because we don't want them to feel overwhelmed.
Right.
And so for the clients that do it all the time, you don't have to go through that. They get it, they've done it. But for those one-offs, it's a lot of just educating them. Here's how the process plays out. Here's why we do it this way. And here's what you can expect. And so as long as you have that really open communication with them, they usually get it. You can make it a fun process. And so that's really been sort of the main tenet of our business, is that customer service. I even like to think more about us as an organization trying to treat the design process as almost a little bit of a hospitality type process. How do we make this a really enjoyable experience, especially for those one-timers? And so it's hard to think about trying to treat people in that manner, that hospitality manner in a professional services experience like this, but you just have to constantly be thinking about that and going, all right, what would the next step be? How would I want to be treated in that situation? And you just try to pull that off.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's awesome. So with that, you guys have been able to, obviously, again, 22 years is a good amount of time in business regardless, but with your background in construction, or not background, but being in the construction industry and all that stuff, how has that been able to kind of help you, how do I say this, enhance that experience and create that unreasonable hospitality with your people?
Well, we're a little bit removed from the construction. The contractors are the ones that are actually physically building the building. But for us to understand how that part of the world works, how construction actually works, how things do get built, and having the good relationships with the contractors, we know that not everything is going to go perfect on the job site. Mm-hmm. So how do you resolve those issues quickly to still help provide the best outcome for the client? And that's one of the ways we actually pull off projects now, is by teaming up with contractors, because a lot of folks are going to them directly first versus going to the architect first. And so knowing that you can be either hard to work with or easy to work with, why choose the latter in that situation? How do we all work together? Because we all want the same thing, and that is the best outcome for the client. Yeah. And so it's been fun in that way that Dan and I we've each done some construction ourselves, so we have a little bit of understanding in that world. Some of our younger folks haven't really ever built something, so teaching them and getting them on job sites so they can see, this is how those materials go together. It's a lot different in the real world versus the digital world in that regard. And so, just having that experience and walking them through it really helps connect the dots. But in the end, we're all just trying to get that great outcome for the customer. What do they really need? What's going to help them thrive and grow, or provide good customer service to their customers? And so, just knowing that is the common thread throughout the process is a lot of how we pull that off.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very important for the architects to understand, kind of like you said, how this material goes to this one and how it kind of connects and kind of weaves together, because it's a big thing, right?
And we're not perfect in that regard. There's a lot of times we'll call a contractor, we're like struggling with a detail and say, hey, this is what we want it to look like. How would you build it? And they'll say, oh, we would do it this way because it'll save some time on labor, or it might save some material. Oh, perfect. Well, let's design it that way so you're not asking us after the fact, hey, can I do it this way instead? Yeah. So there's a lot of back and forth and collaboration there that I'm not sure everybody realizes happens actually during a design process. So.
Well, and the fact that you're willing to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is what we want. How do we achieve that?
Yeah.
Because so many times you lose it from this office to the field, and the guy doing the work is like, these guys are crazy. What are they doing?
Well, and that's another part of it too, is, if we're doing design in a silo and then it goes to the contractor, and the contractor hasn't necessarily been involved in the design process, they don't necessarily know why things ended up the way they were. But in today's age, when we're doing a lot of CMAR projects or design build projects and the contractors are involved from day one, it's really helpful because they hear the conversations that are had with the client and they understand this is what drove that decision making and why we ended up here. And it just makes the whole project more seamless.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Then they're not cursing you at the end either.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
This actually segues really nicely into my next question, right? So talk us through the entire process from, okay, somebody's got an idea to concept to design to completion. Walk us through that process with you and your company, please.
All right. So this is probably the part of the architectural world that is the least understood, and that is people generally know the what and the why, but they don't always understand the how. And so, and I reference that from sort of the Simon Sinek books of Find Your Why, but there's a how in there for us that is where I think it's just hard for some folks to understand when they come and sit down and they start saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, I want this incorporated and all that. And we can write all that stuff down, and that's essentially, the program for the project or the scope for the project. And then maybe a couple weeks later, they come in and we're sitting down with some either trace paper sketches or something we've printed off from a computer program or whatever that we've inputted some information. That in between is that fuzzy area for a lot of folks. Like, well, how do they go from something up here to this? And for us, that's the creative process. Yeah. And I don't know that I have a great explanation for how that happens, other than I think that's one of the reasons people go into architecture, is they enjoy that problem solving, creative process. And it's how do we take what that client distilled down to us that they desire and put it into a form that is built out of wood, steel, glass, stone, whatever it is. Yeah. And is this outcome that then we can hand this to a contractor and that thing can get built. Yeah. So that's the process is that it's sitting down. Okay, what are the needs? All right, let us work through a few options, come up with some ideas, run those past you. We'll brainstorm together. You'll tell us what you like, what you don't like, and then we'll just keep iterating. So it's kind of a forward-moving, looping process. So you move forward a little bit, you loop back, you move forward a little bit, you loop back, and ideally you would love to have a project that just starts here and goes straight there, but
that's not the way it works.
Not the way it works, unfortunately. And usually by the end, again, for those sort of single-time users of design services, they get it. They're like, okay, yeah, I understand now. It was horrendous at some points in there because we have to make a lot of decisions, and people will second guess their decision, especially if it's residential, because that's where they live.
Yeah.
And it's like they're always second guessing. They're watching too much HGTV, getting too many different ideas. So, but yeah, it's a fun process. Or it can be a fun process, but it just takes that iteration, and then a lot of decision. And of course, budgets come into play. Everybody doesn't have deep or endless pockets,
right.
And so it's. How do we make sure we're trying to manage that budget? Because everybody will say, well, yeah, let's do that and let's do that. But those things always have a cost to them.
And
so
that's when they come back.
Yeah. And that's when we have to say, all right, look, if you really want that, we need to prioritize some stuff here. And, those are discussions that you have to have, and you just can't be afraid to have those discussions. As long as everybody's really honest about what they can invest in a project, those will go much better. If they're afraid to tell you what that number is, that's where you're gonna run into issues. Right. So, yeah.
Talk to us about your timeline, right? So anybody that wants to hire you guys, build out a custom home, what is that timeline from concept to starting it on design and to actually build process, right? Are we looking at days, weeks, months? Like, where are we at with that one, and what does that look like?
That's a great question. For most of the custom homes that we've done in, say, the past 7 to 8 years, you're really looking at, or at least what I tell clients when I first sit down with them, somewhere between 9 and 12 months for the design process alone. Yeah. And so, and they're usually caught off guard by that a little bit. And, but, we've done it shorter than that. Yeah. And, after it's done, I've had clients come back and say, gosh, Tracy, I wish we would have taken a little longer in design because we were bombarded with so many decisions at each meeting that every time we left and got in our car, we were second guessing some of our decisions. Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, the process is meant to be fluid enough that you can call me up afterwards and say, hey, I know we decided this, but we're changing our mind. It's okay. Yeah. That's okay. We can figure it out. We can make it work. Don't worry about it. And clients do it all the time. They will call up and say, I'm sorry I'm being so difficult. And I was like, no, you're not being difficult. A custom home is really personal. Yeah. You're going to live there, and this might be your last home. And so we want it to be right. Yeah. So don't fret about changing your mind. We can always adapt and make that work. And so that's just a part of the process. I try to explain that to people up front, but they're always so apologetic when they do change their minds. It's like, no, it's okay. We can do it. But yeah, I mean, design takes, about that long. We've had some actually go longer than that. And like I said, we've had a few shorter. And it's like, more or less at the client's pace. What do they want? I've had clients that travel a lot, and they'll always come back and say, hey, we saw this, can we incorporate that? And that will obviously drag it out a little longer. From construction standpoint, I would say most of those homes are probably taking around a year to year and a half to build. It just depends on the complexity of the home. And the site can weigh into that if you have a pretty complex site. Sure. So there's lots of factors that go into that, and obviously we rely on the contractors to sort of help tell us, hey, this is looking like about a 14-month process for construction or something like that. Yeah. So yeah.
So you're saying I can't just make a decision, you have it ready in a month? No, and that's something though I think that a lot of people have to think about, right? Like it's 9 to 12 months before a shovel even hits the dirt, and I think too many times they don't see the year that it took to get to that point, and they're just like, oh, that's a great building, and they don't know that people have been thinking about it for 2 years already. Right. I think that's the crazy part. Tracy, you guys have quite a wide array of what projects you guys in your portfolio, what you will do. So from residential to community buildings to commercial buildings, for you personally, what has been some of your most projects that you feel most passionate about?
I would say for whatever reason, I've kind of become that high-end residential guy in our office, and there's a lot of companies or architecture firms that will sort of avoid residential projects just because they can be trying at times, because you're dealing with people who are really passionate about their where they're going to live. But I really find a lot of joy in those projects, working with people one-on-one or with couples, and helping them sort of through this road of discovery during the design process and idea generation, and letting them, I like to let them have as much control of that as possible, because this is special to them. I can just sort of act as that medium of helping to guide a little bit, but I want it to be theirs, right? So I get a lot of joy in those projects. The other ones that are sort of more community focused, like the new rec centers at the middle schools, the outdoor pools that we have, the hopefully someday indoor aquatic center that we'll have. I'm really passionate about those kind of quality life projects, because I think that's important for our community to be able to help attract, from an economic development standpoint, businesses and people back to our community. And then some of the really sort of more unique and special projects, the one that comes to mind immediately would be like Wareham Hall. We're having a lot of fun with that project. It's a great client, fun to work with, and when that project is done, I think it's going to be just a tremendous asset to our community. So those are the ones that really get me excited.
No, and I think that's awesome. And I think with what you guys have been able to do, your portfolio is quite a bit too. And they bring a different style to our community too. And I think that's kind of a cool part. Like I've been, you've got your slideshow going up here and seeing what your projects and stuff are going. And it's, if you see me looking, that's what I'm looking at when you, but it's cool. I mean, there's some really neat and different buildings. And I think that's, versus just the cookie cutter stuff is that's hard to see that. So with a lot of these projects and things that you're going through, there's got to be challenges and some innovations that you've had to come up with. What have some of those been for you and the team?
Probably the biggest challenge almost on every project is the budget.
Always.
Everybody's got big ideas and big dreams, but it is, and I think when I was talking to you before we sat down here today, you sort of mentioned or phrased something about unique solutions. And so, every project has a unique solution. And so that's what we kind of strive for. What can we do to meet the client's desires and needs within the constraints of the budget, and or even other constraints that might be code related or zoning related or whatever it is. And as far as innovation goes, the fun thing is we're in an industry where new product is being developed, almost weekly, right? There's always some new thing coming out. And the challenge is, one, trying to stay up to speed on all that, but two, how do we take what's being developed that's maybe new and better, if there is, if it is, and how do we start incorporating that into our process? Does it help save time? Does it help save dollars? Does it help with labor? What are those things? And again, it comes back to just working with everybody as a team, working with our consultants that we typically use, or working with the contractors or the subcontractors. Everybody brings something to the table, and so how do we gather all that information and come up with maybe a new solution for a problem that we've been running into all the time? And nothing's popping immediately into my head, but it feels like every project we're having to do something like that on. But number one biggest challenge of all probably is always, how do we maintain the budget, especially today with the cost of everything, in construction world, 40-50% up, but we have to keep within those parameters. So it's been a challenge, but there's always a solution.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine too, like, like you just said, I mean, what was that, 4 years ago that everything just doubled, right? Yeah. And it was, so being able to do that. So I guess this also brings up another question for me is that Anderson Knight's been around 22 years. Yeah. You were an architect prior to that. Yeah. What has been, like, you've seen a lot of changes in the construction industry from doing off-site built houses, they ship them in, to slab homes, to and where pre-construction where they tilt up homes and do things that way. And now, I mean, they're 3D printing homes at this point in time. So it's like, you've seen a lot. What have been some of the, I'm going to take it this way. What have been some of the fun ones that you've been able to, like, oh, that's a really neat idea, let's incorporate this?
Oh gosh. Trying to think. You've mentioned a lot of neat innovations within the construction industry, and as I'm mulling that over in my head, part of my answer to this question would be, if you were to ask any contractor what is their biggest hurdle today, it's trying to find skilled labor to do that work. And so that's where a lot of the innovation in product comes in, is with the loss of some of that skilled labor, how do we make the assembly of buildings easier? Right. We don't have some of the artisan craftsmen we had 50 to 100 plus over years ago. You look at some of our beautiful buildings downtown and all the ornamental stonework and woodwork, and you just can't really replicate that today because that labor force has exited, or mostly exited, the workforce. And so, what is an implementation that we've been able to use? I would say it's more of sort of from the digital end on our end, with the advent of the contractors using the same platforms we do, where we can transfer digital models to them, and they now have the same information in a 3D intelligent model that has all of the data associated with it. So they can send that out, and all of their subs can extract the data they need. Right. Now, not everybody's doing that yet, but that's definitely the direction it's headed. Sure. And so utilizing, even for us internally with clients, utilizing things like virtual reality, putting on the goggles and letting people walk through their building or their house and going. We've had people make decisions about, I don't know if I want that fireplace there or not. All right, let's put the goggles on and walk through there. Oh, yeah, I like it there. Let's do that. We've had people make decisions about their designs by going virtual, and that's going to continue to infiltrate our, as is AI. There's a lot of folks that are worried about AI taking our jobs away. I'm not concerned about that necessarily. I think AI is going to give us more tools to use to help people visualize even more, because everybody, if they can see something, it's easier to make decisions than looking at a flat piece of paper. Yep. So yeah.
And I see that every single day, right? I walk through houses every day and I see people, and I'm like, well, you can change this and do this, and they're like, I just don't get it. Yeah. But that changes it, right? Like giving the goggles and all that stuff. That's a really neat opportunity to be able to do that versus, heck, even years ago, what was it? It was, there's a program where you could kind of walk through on a computer screen, but it's not the same as when you're
we can still do that. We can do virtual walkthroughs on the screen, but it's not the same as being virtually in the space, which isn't even the same as actually being in the space, but it's a step closer. Yep. So, yeah.
And without spending all the money to get there.
Right.
You've been in business for a while. What have you guys been able to do and kind of create and set yourselves apart from, with Anderson Knight, what have you been able to do to set yourselves apart and making that client communication, that client collaboration in every project, and how's that been a big push for your clients?
I think it just comes down to communication and relationships. We really want to develop a relationship with our clients. We want to, and again, it's customer service, hospitality kind of driven. And, it's what can we do to make this what seems to a lot of folks as a process that is just a little fuzzy and unknown. How do we make it easy and pleasant to go through? And so with that constantly in our minds, that's the culture that Dan and I have tried to set up with everybody that works for us is, always put yourself in the client's shoes. And if you were having to go through this process, would you be happy with how, one, you're being treated, two, the information you're getting, any aspect, right? And so, I don't know that we're doing anything magical other than being nice. I feel like it's that simple, to be honest. And, there's plenty of movies out there that portray architects as these sort of really egotistical, I know everything, you know nothing kind of stuff. And, it should not be that way. There's probably architects out there that have done that and treat people that way, but that's just not who we are.
Right.
And so it's just truly, really like, we want to be friends, we want to develop a relationship with you, and we want to help you.
Right.
And we want you to be happy when it's all said and done. And so if we just constantly are reminding ourselves that's the process here, then it works out. So, yeah.
Crazy concept. Be nice. And just be nice to people and it'll be okay. Yeah. No, I love it. I love that fact. And it's, it's the truth in any business anymore. It's just be a human being. We're all here on the same time and we're just be nice to each other, right? Yep. Talk to us about one of your most memorable projects that you've done, residential or commercial or community-based, whatever it is. What have been some of the most memorable and the most impactful projects that you've been a part of?
There's a lot, but I'll take this back to the residential world. Again, those are you're with a client in that project type generally for somewhere between 2 and 3 years, and just because construction starts doesn't mean my role is done. I'm involved through construction as well, typically helping to either help make some decisions that haven't been made yet, or ensuring things are progressing and getting built the way we desire them to be, or if an issue comes up that was unforeseen, how do we resolve that? So it's a long relationship, but and I can think just even 2 weeks ago, we did a housewarming for a new build, and the contractor's there, and we're there. And the client had been in the house plenty of times, but had never seen it in its truly cleaned and finished state. Yeah. Right? Everything's covered up. They don't want anything to get damaged. And so they don't ever see the whole picture. So we're all standing in there, and the client walks in, husband and wife, and she literally makes it 10 steps into the house and just starts bawling.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's what immediately warms my heart. It's like, okay, this was powerful. The struggles that we overcame to get to this point, it was all worth it.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of those where you walk, you're there and they are seeing it in its true form for the first time, and you can just see the emotion, and it's like, yes, that's why I do this. That's what it's all about. And so can I pinpoint one exactly? Probably not, because there's been so many of them.
Sure.
So but that's what truly fills my cup. Yeah.
No, that's impactful. That's where you get to have it all come to a culmination of that one moment. So
if that's what I can use my skill set to do, is to help with that, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. So I want to ask you a question because we're sitting here, right?
Yep.
And I feel like it kind of ties a little bit too. But behind us, we've got a bunch of Lego sets here. So, and I asked that question when I walked into the office. Where can you tell me the story, or tell our viewers the story about the Legos?
Sure. There's probably not a self-respecting architect out there that doesn't love Legos. At least I hope there's not. But I had Legos as a kid, truly enjoyed playing with them. I'm sure it formed something within me, but what's behind us is literally 15 years of Christmas presents to my son. He's 21, so 15 years, starting when he was 5 or 6, I guess, buying these sets. And it was just a way for me and him to connect and have something to do. So every Christmas he'd get the set, and then we'd get, each evening we'd put a few pieces on and work on it together. And then as he got older, he got tired of waiting on me trying to find. I was the piece finder. I was relegated to piece finding, and he was the builder.
That's awesome.
And but then as he got older, he's like, I'm looking for the piece, and he just picks it right out. And pretty soon I'm just completely out of the picture, right?
You're just there.
But he still gets a set every year to add to the collection. But so yeah, it's just been a fun thing. And then once I started bringing them into the office, we actually started buying some sets within the office to do. And it's just a fun sort of team building thing. They'll sit out here on the pool table, and it might take 3 or 4 or 5 months to get the whole thing put together. But people will just stop by, and even clients will stop by and will say, hey, why don't you do a page or two? And they'll put them on there. So it's just kind of a fun thing. But yeah, we all enjoy it. So yeah.
That's awesome. No, I think it's a great story too. I mean, just a little bit of the stories you've told me too. So it's been kind of neat. All right. So talking about the future, right? What does 20 plus years of Anderson Knight, what do the next 5-10 years look like for you guys? And what are you doing in order to kind of grow, and what does that look like?
Yeah, that's actually been a lot of discussion around here for probably the last, it even started pre-COVID. Dan and I realizing, we are getting older, unfortunately, and we needed to start planning for succession. And we've got a lot of great talent in our office, highly motivated people that we absolutely don't want to lose, and that we want to create something that lives on well past us.
Sure.
And so probably strategically, maybe 10 years ago, we started engaging some consultants and starting talking about succession planning and what does that look like. And so, fast forward to today, Dan and I are not the only owners of the company. We have 3 other owners currently that are starting to buy into the company and start to buy us out. And it took a while for us to figure out how to even do that. And we wanted to make it as easy and painless as possible for folks to do that. And that took some time to set up because we're not doing it the traditional way some other businesses probably do it. So, but we do have that in mind. You said 5 to 10 years. I think Dan's timeline is quicker than mine, but I'm looking at probably 10 to 12, maybe 15 years at a stretch. That'll put me in my mid 70s, just telling you how old I am now. That's definitely on our minds, and we are definitely trying to strategically grow the company in a way that allows that to continue. And ultimately, if we can leave this much bigger than we ever dreamt it would be and set those folks up for success, that's really kind of our end goal.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, and I think leaving a legacy there too is going to be a big piece of it.
Yeah,
for sure.
So,
all right. So before we wrap it up, I love this question. I ask it a lot, right? there's a lot of people that watch these videos and talk to entrepreneurs and everything that way. What advice would you give any entrepreneur, anybody starting a business? Maybe it's an architectural firm, but just entrepreneur in general. What advice would you give to that particular person who's just starting?
Wow. Don't be afraid. It's scary. It's nerve-wracking. It's unknown. You probably don't know everything you should know. Develop some really good relationships with some different folks, and have folks who are your champions. And but just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail. Just try it. And again, if you just treat people well, and you do the right thing, which is not that hard to do, you'll probably be more successful than you ever dreamt you would be. So I don't have an exact formula or checklist. Hey, you need to do these 10 things, but it's just, it's going to be scary. There's going to be moments where you wake up in the middle of the night and have that sort of panic attack, and just work your way through it, calm yourself down, talk to lots of people. Definitely, develop your network and get to know as many people as you can, and people will become your champions. Yeah. And it just kind of takes that. I think when I first started, I thought people were just going to come running to our door and I wouldn't have to go out and do anything. But that is obviously one of the naive things I thought when I started. And so now, getting involved in service clubs and chamber and other volunteer things around the community, it's huge. I mean, that's what it takes for us to have a community, is for people to be involved. And so I would say get involved.
Yeah. Anybody watching this video, how do they get a hold of Anderson Knight and get a hold of you guys to employ you and talk to you, whatever that is? How do they get a hold of you? Phone number, emails, that kind of thing.
Phone number is 785-539-0806. And you can reach anybody here by their first name. So Tracy, Tracy, at weareaka.com.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Before we kind of wrap it up, is there anything else you'd like to add at this point in time?
No, I think you've done a great job of steering the conversation. So appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, of course. So, well, and I just want to kind of go on here and say, Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And you guys, I promise you will not be disappointed. Number one, the office is really cool too. If you're driving down Anderson, you'll see it, no problem. Here soon, they're going to have a big Santa Claus on top of it, I'm sure, and everything with that. But I think that one of the things that I would tell you, anybody watching this or anybody interested in having some work done or anything that way, is reach out to these guys. I promise you've driven by their buildings if you've spent any time in Manhattan at all, because they're all over the place. And they do a fantastic job. And as you've heard today, they sit and they listen. And they pay attention to what your wants and what your needs are as a family, as a business, as a community, and whatever that looks like. And so I would say reach out to these guys. You're going to love the product that they give you and the opportunity they give you to kind of have a hand in what project it is that you're looking for. So again, Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys do enjoy this content, and if you do enjoy kind of what you see here, number one, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go and hit that little bell so you get notified of any future content. And please, 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 if you have somebody who is interested in knowing a little bit more about Anderson Knight or AKA, have them share this video with them. Let them see kind of what behind the scenes looks like here at AKA and what they can expect when they get here. So thank you guys so much for watching. And until next week, this is another episode of Local Legends of the Flint Hills. Thank you. We'll see you then.